Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them, and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. And today we have two great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story, when a customer's complaints create chaos in the kitchen. The second story, the rise and fall of a toxic job, a tale of revenge and redemption. The first story is my first EP at work. Context: I work in a small family-run restaurant and double as a server and line cook, and have been there for nearly 8 years. We're also in a big tourist area. We have a somewhat open kitchen, pizza prep and anything grilled, but also have a smaller kitchen in the back for side dishes, pasta, etc. We have a few regulars that know the servers by name. A couple of them are older and often request to be sat in a certain server's section. Not a problem. One of our regulars comes in and requests to be sat in my section. The acting host, owner, informs her that I'm in the kitchen today and not on the floor. They get sat in another server's section, but ask if I'm doing okay, as I'm only recently back to work from an injury. The owner is also a friend of the regular, and asks me when I have a free minute if I would mind going out and saying hello. I go out and speak with them quickly like the owner asked, before heading back to the kitchen. As I'm walking past another table, a glass smashes. I turn to see a family. EM, father, and 3 young kids. I look around for the server, but I can't see her, and I know I can't leave the glass lying around, so I quickly grab a spot, sweep, and begin to clean. It as owner comes over. EM insists it was me who knocked over their drink and ruined the kids' dinner. However, how the glass smashed and the kid and furniture covered in soda suggested otherwise. The owner tells me to head back to the kitchen as he has just seated an 8-top, and they'll be putting in orders. He then proceeds to move the family to a clean table and get them all new sodas on the house. This doesn't seem to be good enough for EM as she follows me back through the open kitchen. I inform her that customers can't be back here, as it's an open kitchen and for staff only. She tells me that because servers walk around here and the cutlery and menus are stored there, it must be a public space, and she's a manager of a restaurant, and knows that where menus and cutlery are kept is public spaces. I keep trying to tell her that she needs to leave the space, and that might be the case in her restaurant, but it isn't here. But it doesn't work, so I give up and go into the closed kitchen. But EM follows me in there too. The owner is still busy with the husband, and I can't see the head chef around, so I wash my hands, throw on my hairnet, and start to look at my tickets in the hope that she just stands there until the head chef gets back, or realizes she's in a place she shouldn't be. EM demands that I remake her son's dinner, as I was the one who spilt soda on it. I do see that another kid's meal ticket has been rang through by the owner for the table. Whether it was comped or not, I don't know. So I ask her to leave so I can begin to make it. She once again refuses and insisted that she stays there to make sure that I don't, and I quote, poison her son. I ignore the comment and the head chef comes back, who asks what EM is doing in the kitchen. She retells the story of how I apparently knocked over the drinks. All of them this time apparently. Ruining the dinners. Again, apparently all of them. And that she wants to make sure I don't mess up their order as she overheard the conversation I had with the regular about me training and taking on the line cook role. Head chef is a tall, muscly man. He often deals with drunk, annoying people at the bar for the bartender. That kind of guy. He calls her story bull, looks at the tickets and tells me just to remake the kid's meal. EM proceeds to hurl insults at us both, which draws in the owner. EM tells the owner that I have ruined her holiday and that head chef threatened her, and she wants to call the police as she's fearing for her safety. As head chef is angry and has access to knives? Head chef is physically imposing, yes, and deals with drunk people a lot, but in reality that dude won't even kill spiders, and has the servers or line cooks deal with them because he's afraid of them. The whole charade ends when servers start coming in asking for food for the 8-top that hasn't even been prepared. The owner informs me to make the son's dish, but to put it in a to-go box, and tells EM that he will call the police if she wishes, but only after reviewing CCTV if head chef did threaten her with the knife. Then of course he'll call them. EM doesn't like this solution and continues to scream at the owner. He tells her that she's had her fun and is now making it hard for the restaurant to function, so if she doesn't leave the restaurant, he'll have her removed by police. EM doesn't like this either and continues to throw insults, and says she'll leave a terrible review. Like we care. Owner eventually manages to ask one of the servers to call the police to remove the woman, and to comp the whole 8-tops meals. This whole thing went on for an hour and a half, in which time the table of 8 had to be comped, as did 4 other tables of 2 because EM wouldn't let the kitchen staff work. Safe to say, EM is now banned from the restaurant. Owner said kids and husband seemed okay when he was dealing with them to begin with. As she was removed by police, owner said that husband and kids had actually left the restaurant. EM's husband and kids had already left the restaurant. Best move ever. I never cease to be amazed at the arrogance of such people. How can someone be so stubborn and insistent when there are so many people around who just want to dine out and have a good time? This EM really overreacted and clearly forgot that she was offered compensation for what happened. But it didn't seem to please her and she decided to make a scene. But the restaurant owner did what he should have done and called the police to handle the situation. It was a real fight scenario, and I can't help but laugh at how she was eventually kicked out of the restaurant. I hope the owner enjoyed the subsequent quiet dining experience of his guests, and that you don't have to deal with such eccentric characters again. The second story is, toxic job I left roughly a year ago is dying. So before I started this job, I had a very enjoyable gas station job. Pay was decent, clientele were great, only had 3 notably bad customers in the 2.5 years I worked there. I loved my coworkers and my boss was a saint. Scheduled herself for 60 hours one week so I could take the week off and go to a convention. At the time, my fiance worked for a newspaper, distributing freshly printed papers to our carriers. Well, I had ended up stuck on night shift at my gas station job and hardly ever saw my coworkers anymore. Well, a position opened up at the newspaper working with my fiance, so I put in my 2-week notice and moved to the newspaper to spend my working days with the person I loved. Now, up until this newspaper job, I was very unaware of corporate practices and greed, but working there I saw it firsthand and learned more in that year about why this subreddit exists than I had in my entire life. Let's go through the big points, shall we? 3 months after I started, the last district manager quit because he was refused having his anniversary off. There had been 3 the year before I started, and 5 another year before that. As soon as he left, everyone was offered his position, starting with the guy who'd been there before my fiance, then me. I'd been here for 3 months and was offered district manager because the boss didn't want to do it. All the district manager's work got split among the workforce. Office day workers took on the paperwork. Us warehouse grunts became responsible for running paper routes if the carrier was sick. We had a company vehicle but were expected to use our personal cars and were reimbursed at half the mileage rate recommended by the IRS. It was like 32 versus 65 cents by the time I left. It had only gone up to 38 cents. We were made to build a room in the warehouse. Framing, drywall, everything. I literally do this as a side job at double the rate I was being paid. Keep this in mind. Our third warehouse worker left, leaving just me and my fiance, and was never replaced. My fiance was fired for refusing to use their personal car to run routes when gas prices skyrocketed due to Ukraine. Now, I should have left then, but after it was just me, I got bumped up from 30 hours a week to full-time with benefits, so I was doing 8-hour days in a job that required 2 hours of work, and the rest of my day was spent reading SCPs or flipping through Reddit. Y'all inspired me. I kept up the facade of a good little worker drone for 2 months. Quietly spread chaos amongst the carriers. Most of the groundwork had already been laid for me. I learned the DM had filled the warehouse with personal friends he hoped would follow him out the door. There was already a massive divide between the carriers and the office, but I stayed out of it for the sake of my coworkers. But when it was just me, I didn't care anymore. I allied with the carriers and made that divide even worse. Nothing blatant or mean, I just joined in the complaining about my manager. Before me, the carriers didn't trust one another. My manager had tried to pull exactly what I was doing to keep his workers and contractors fighting amongst themselves rather than with him. Fortunately, I'm a lot better with people than he was. Once I was done with that, I moved on to step 2. I was in a unique situation. This job had blown the transmission on my car, and I was driving my now fired fiance's car to work. I informed my boss of this and that I couldn't run routes because it wasn't my car, so I got to start using the company vehicle. For the next few months, I was badgers about figuring something else out and getting a car of my own, to which I'd reply, sure, give me the $4,000 I need to fix the transmission this job broke, and we're Gucci, and the conversation would end there. The best part is the transmission was replaced the year prior, and was still under warranty, so I got it replaced for free. Then my fiance started a new job, and I informed my boss that I was going to have to drop full-time and could no longer run routes, because I needed to be home by 6, so my fiance could get to work. This was the beginning of the final step. I had slowly proven to my boss that he wasn't in control of me or my position, because I realized something very important. All my manager really wanted was to not have to run routes or work the night shift, but now I was the only night shift worker who could run routes. And then I was the only night shift worker. After that, whenever a route went down for a night, he'd sell the contract to another carrier for the night. And then he asked me to set up all the new computers in the office. My response was simple. I do computer consulting and repair as a side job. My rate is $20 an hour, but I'm willing to do it for $18. And I was fully willing to negotiate down to $16. I was making $12 an hour at the time, and I got back one word. Never mind. That led to a talk about how my job was just supposed to be whatever they needed me for, and I had another job lined up at this point, so I tried negotiating. I explained the job and the pay, but that I liked this job and was willing to stay, but could not do full-time anymore, and if my job included as much responsibility as it claimed, I should be paid more. I asked for $15 an hour and was denied, because it wasn't in the budget. Finished up that day, went home, wrote my resignation letter, and went back that night. Finished the night, and right before I clocked out, I dropped my keys on my desk and sent the email to my boss in HR. Walked out the door and never turned back. But the story doesn't end there. No, for if you remember I made friends with all the carriers, I found out that my boss was stuck doing my job for almost 2 months. He had a wife and freshborn twins at the time, and I thought that's just karma for you. Fire my fiance and ruin my wedding fund? You don't get to see your kids anymore. F with my family, I F with yours. Could not fill the position at all. Wonder why. And he got so desperate that he hired one of our carriers for the position. But not just any carrier, the carrier that was caught on video stealing papers and selling them outside of his contract. And they kept him on as a carrier after that, only to put him in the main warehouse. At the beginning of the year, the paper canceled all home delivery contracts and now send papers through the mail. They still had contracts for carriers to stores, but by dropping home delivery, they left 2/3 of the carriers jobless, most of which were elderly people that couldn't do much else. And now, dear reader, we come to the close of this story. The paper has one carrier left now, and unfortunately, unsurprisingly, it's not one of my friends. Why do they only have one carrier, last I heard? Because everyone, carriers and office employees alike, were giving their walking papers. Don't ever work for a newspaper, especially if it's been bought by a certain enterprise, because all they do is liquidate. Bonus: 1 month after I quit, my ex-boss texted me and asked how things were. So I got to brag about working with my dad building houses, and was on my own schedule, and made more than he did. Your story is amazing. Probably the best way to get out of a toxic job is to just go and not look back. But you did so much more than that. You used your position to show your former boss what it's like to be ignored and unappreciated. You made the story as interesting as if it were a Hollywood movie about working at a newspaper where you're the main character, saving yourself and your family from corporate robbers. And your legendary resignation was exactly the kind of final touch that deserves cinematic applause. And in the end, as always, good triumphs over evil. Your story is a true lesson in the importance of taking care of your employees and not ignoring their needs and concerns. Let your former boss learn from your mistakes and realize that you should never play with those who know how to cause real chaos. And yes, your bonus is awesome. Congratulations on finding a much more satisfying and rewarding job, and good luck with your construction business. It definitely deserves a lot of respect and admiration. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.